Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Thanks for tuning in today. This is an educational channel. We try to um, hook you up with some great information about uh, theories of everything, grand unified theories, all-encompassing theories, magnum opuses, tour de forces, and earth-shattering discoveries from obscure and suppressed sources. Things that you probably wouldn't know about, or maybe only vaguely know about, um, and that they're just not really in the within your Overton windows, and that you need to do a good deal of digging to get out. And we've been doing a lot of Bible decodes. This is really number 325, and mostly focused on the New Testament. This is going to be both Old and New. Actually, this particular author refers to the Old Testament as the Bible and refers to the New Testament as the Testament. So that's a little bit different terminology. But we just got done dealing with some of the work from Roman Piso, and now we are looking at the American patriot named Thomas Paine. And just about 250 years ago today, I think it's actually January 1st, maybe 1776, he came out with this pamphlet called Common Sense, and that was very famous for kind of inciting the revolution. And but he was well known as a deist, and most Christians will tell you that the founding of the American Republic was based on Christian values. Maybe to a certain extent, but to also a very large extent, it was founded on deist values. And the deism is more, now there were some people like Washington who were deists, but they were also Christians. They were really like closet deists. They proclaimed some type of Christianity out front, but a deist is really a person who believes in God, but believes that God did not write any books, and that the book of God is his or her or whatever creation, that the creation itself is where you can understand God, and that you do this through your faculty of reason. And so it is basically a religion based on reason, and based on interpreting your environment, your world, your creation through your faculty of reason, and to be able to understand God that way. And that the Bible in particular is something that God had absolutely nothing to do with. Okay, so we are reading Thomas Paine's book called The Age of Reason. And this came out in a much later period when he was over in France and kind of worried about his life because the French Revolution was going on, and a lot of his friends were being having their heads chopped off, and he wanted to postpone the writing of this book until he was an old man, so that he would kind of lay it all out there. But he ended up writing it a little bit earlier because he was about to be put in prison, and I believe he was actually arrested something like 6 hours after he got done with the first part of the book. Um, Thomas Paine was born in England in 1737, I believe, although I think some people say 1738. And we'll just go over this bio here as part of this book, Age of Reason. Thomas Paine was an English pamphleteer, revolutionary, radical inventor, and intellectual. He lived and worked in Britain until age 37. So it looks like he didn't come over to the U.S. until 1774 or so, but he kind of immediately got to the forefront. It makes you kind of wonder whether was he just kind of like an imported revolutionary, just kind of like you know, I won't say like Antifa or something, but like, you know, that he just followed around the revolutions, because then he found himself in France, you know, by the time that the French Revolution got started. You know, was he kind of like an agent of somebody to just show up, you know, when there was a color revolution or whatever, some type of revolution going on. So anyway, he worked in Britain until age 37, when he emigrated to British American colonies in time to participate in the American Revolution. His principal contribution was the powerful, widely read pamphlet Common Sense, 1776. Again, close to we're right there at the 250th anniversary, because I believe that book came out on January 1st. Advocating colonial America's independence from the Kingdom of Great Britain. And then he also wrote the American Crisis from 1776 to 1783, a pro-revolutionary pamphlet series. Later, he greatly influenced the French Revolution. He wrote The Rights of Man in 1791, a guide to Enlightenment ideas. And says, despite not speaking French, he was elected to the French National Convention in 1792. The Girondists regarded him as an ally, so the Montagnards, especially Robespierre, regarded him as an enemy. In December of 1793, he was arrested and imprisoned in Paris, then released in 1794. Became notorious because of the Age of Reason, which he wrote in 1793 and 94. The book advocated deism and argued against Christian doctrines. In France, he also wrote the pamphlet Agrarian Justice, discussing the origins of property, and introduced the concept of a guaranteed minimum income. Socialism before socialists. Remained in France during the early Napoleonic era, but condemned Napoleon's dictatorship, calling him the completest charlatan that ever existed. Now, this is in sharp contrast with Roman Piso, who believes that Napoleon was a type of a hero who was going after the Holy Roman Empire and ended the First Reich, which was the first Holy Roman Empire. And then that caused the Second Reich to rise up in, you know, the Kaiser Wilhelm period in the 1870s up until World War I, and then the Third Reich. And this was all part of the Roman Catholic Church, or, yeah, the Roman Catholic Church that, you know, started with his ancestors back in ancient Rome with the psychological operation that is the New Testament. Anyway, in 1802, Thomas Paine returned to America at Thomas Jefferson's invitation. And, you know, Thomas Jefferson was another one of these deists. Also, James Madison and Benjamin Franklin were known as deists as well as Ethan Allen, the Vermont colonel of Green Mountain Boys. And so there certainly is an argument that deism was, you know, a great foundation to the founding of the American Republic, not just Christianity. I mean, when you've got Jefferson, Madison, Washington, and Thomas Paine, and Ethan Allen, and Benjamin Franklin, those are, you know, those are three of the first four presidents, and then a couple other highly influential people. So, you know, it's not cut and dried, you know, like a lot of Christians will tell you. And that, you know, if you look at the Constitution, and no place does it talk about God, no place does it talk about Jesus, the Bible, or anything like that. So, and there are even some treaties that we made. The treaty that we made in during Adams' presidency with the Barbary pirates, it explicitly says that, you know, the United States is not founded on Christian principles. Now, that could have been some propaganda because they were trying to kind of woo these Muslims. Anyway, so Thomas Paine died at age 72 in Greenwich Village in 1809. He's buried in New Rochelle, New York, and yeah, so that's not terribly relevant. So, Common Sense in 1776, the American Crisis started then, and then he wrote this book, Age of Reason, in 1793. Okay, we're going to try to read the first chapter here, and then go from there. This is the author's profession of faith. It has been my intention for several years past to publish my thoughts upon religion. I am well aware of the difficulties that attend the subject, and from that consideration had reserved it to a more advanced period of life. I intended it to be the last offering I should make to my fellow citizens of all nations, and that at a time when the purity of the motive that induced me to it could not admit of a question, even by those who might disapprove the work. The circumstance that has now taken place in France of the total abolition of the whole national order of priesthood and of everything appertaining to compulsive systems of religion and compulsive articles of faith has not only precipitated my intention, but rendered a work of this kind exceedingly necessary, lest in the general wreck of superstition, of false systems of government and false theology, we lose sight of morality, of humanity, and of the theology that is true. As several of my colleagues and others of my fellow citizens of France have given me the example of making their voluntary and individual profession of faith, I also will make mine, and I do this while all that sincerity and frankness with which the mind of man communicates with itself. I believe in one God and no more, and I hope for happiness beyond this life. I believe the equality of man, and I believe that religious duties consist in doing justice, loving mercy, and endeavoring to make our fellow creatures happy. But lest it should be supposed that I believe many other things, in addition to these, I shall, in the progress of this work, declare the things I do not believe, and my reasons for not believing them. I do not believe in the creed professed by the Jewish church, by the Roman church, by the Greek church, by the Turkish church, by the Protestant church, nor by any church that I know of. My own mind is my own church. All national institutions of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, and when he says Turkish, he basically means Muslim, appear to me no other than human inventions set up to terrify and enslave mankind and monopolize power and profit. I do not mean by this declaration to condemn those who believe otherwise. They have the same right to their belief as I have to mine. But it is necessary to the happiness of man that he be mentally faithful to himself. Infidelity does not consist in believing or in disbelieving. It consists in professing to believe what he does not believe. It is impossible to calculate the moral mischief, if I may so express it, that mentally lying has produced in society. When a man has so far corrupted and prostituted the chastity of his mind as to subscribe his professional belief to things he does not believe, he has prepared himself for the commission of every other crime. He takes up the trade of a priest for the sake of gain, and in order to qualify himself for that trade, he begins with a perjury. Can we conceive anything more destructive to morality than this? Soon after I had published the pamphlet Common Sense in America, I saw the exceeding probability that a revolution in the system of government would be followed by a revolution in the system of religion. The adulterous connection of church and state, wherever it had taken place, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, had so effectually prohibited by pains and penalties every discussion upon established creeds and upon first principles of religion, that until the system of government should be changed, those subjects could not be brought fairly and openly before the world, but that whenever this should be done, a revolution in the system of religion would follow. Human inventions and priestcraft would be detected, and man would return to the pure, unmixed, and unadulterated belief of one God and no more. Okay, that is the end of chapter 1. We're going to try to get into chapter 2 here. And chapter 2 is called Of Missions and Revelations. Every national church or religion has established itself by pretending some special mission from God, communicated to certain individuals. The Jews have their Moses, the Christians their Jesus Christ, their apostles and saints, and the Turks their Muhammad, as if the way to God was not open to every man alike. Each of those churches shows certain books which they call Revelation, or the Word of God. The Jews say that their Word of God was given by God to Moses face to face. The Christians say that their Word of God came by divine inspiration. And the Turks say that their Word of God, the Quran, was brought by an angel from heaven. Each of those churches accuses the other of unbelief, and for my own part, I disbelieve them all. As it is necessary to affix right ideas to words, I will, before I proceed further into the subject, offer some observations on the word revelation. Revelation, when applied to religion, means something communicated immediately from God to man. No one will deny or dispute the power of the Almighty to make such a communication if he pleases, but admitting, for the sake of a case, that something has been revealed to a certain person and not revealed to any other person, it is revelation to that person only. When he tells it to a second person, a second to a third to a fourth, and so on, it ceases to be a revelation to all those persons. It is revelation to the first person only, and hearsay to every other, and consequently they are not obliged to believe it. It is a contradiction in terms and ideas to call anything a revelation that comes to us at second hand, either verbally or in writing. Revelation is necessarily limited to the first communication. After this, it is only an account of something which that person says was a revelation made to him, and though he may find himself obliged to believe it, it cannot be incumbent on me to believe it in the same manner, for it was not a revelation made to me, and I have only his word for it that it was made to him. When Moses told the children of Israel that he received the 2 tables of commandments from the hand of God, they were not obliged to believe him, because they had no other authority for it than his telling them so. And I have no other authority for it than some historian telling me so. The commandments carrying no internal evidence of divinity with them. They contain some good moral precepts, such as any man qualified to be a lawgiver or a legislator could produce himself without having recourse to supernatural invention. When I am told that the Quran was written in heaven and brought to Muhammad by an angel, the account comes to near the same kind of hearsay evidence and second-hand authority as the former. I did not see the angel myself, and therefore I have a right not to believe it. When also I am told that a woman called the Virgin Mary said or gave out that she was with child without any cohabitation with a man, and that her betrothed husband Joseph said that an angel told him so, I have a right to believe them or not. Such a circumstance required a much stronger evidence than their bare word for it, but we have not seen this. For neither Joseph nor Mary wrote any such matter themselves. It is only reported by others that they said so. It is hearsay upon hearsay, and I do not choose to rest my belief upon such evidence. It is, however, not difficult to account for the credit that was given to the story of Jesus Christ being the Son of God. He was born when the heathen mythology had still some fashion and repute in the world, and that mythology had prepared the people for the belief of such a story. Almost all the extraordinary men that lived under the heathen mythology were reputed to be the sons of some of their gods. It was not a new thing at that time to believe a man to have been celestial begotten. The intercourse of gods with women was then a matter of familiar opinion. Their Jupiter, according to their accounts, had cohabitated with hundreds. The story, therefore, had nothing in it either new, wonderful, or obscene. It was conformable to the opinions that then prevailed among the people, the people called Gentiles or mythologists, and it was those people only that believed it. The Jews, who had kept strictly to the belief of one God and not more, and who had always rejected the heathen mythology, never credited the story. It is, however, necessary to accept the declamation which says that God visits the sins of the fathers upon the children. This is contrary to every principle of moral justice. It is curious to observe how the theory of what is called the Christian church sprung out of the tale of the heathen mythology. A direct incorporation took place in the first instance by making the reputed founder to be celestially begotten. The trinity of gods that then followed was no other than a reduction of the former plurality, which was about 20 or 30,000. The statue of Mary succeeded the statue of Diana of Ephesus. The deification of heroes changed into the canonization of saints. The mythologists had gods for everything. The Christian mythologists had saints for everything. The church became as crowded with the one as the pantheon had been with the other, and Rome was the place of both. The Christian theory is little else than the idolatry of the ancient mythologists accommodated to the purposes of power and revenue, and it yet remains to reason and philosophy to abolish the amphibious fraud. Okay, that's the end of chapter 2. I think we're going to stop right there. Yeah, so, Thomas Paine obviously didn't know that the New Testament was actually written by the Romans, but he sniffed it out anyway and kind of recognized the fraud just from the fruit. And now I do slightly dispute what he's saying there about the Ten Commandments. Now, I have my own critique of the Ten Commandments. I just asked somebody, what language are the Ten Commandments written in? Because certainly by the time that Moses came around, Hebrew was not even a language at that point. So what language are they written in? But he says that the two tablets that the commandments are said to have been written on, that they don't have any evidence of a divine penmanship or whatever. Now, I think that they could. I mean, if the Ten Commandments were written on stone, and the stone was just glistening, and it was incredibly beautiful, and the writing was otherworldly, that to me would be some evidence of divine providence, for the Ten Commandments. If it was just slapped together, it looked like it was written by a human, then it would not. But I think that just the text of the commandments alone maybe isn't going to be the evidence that you're looking for in terms of divine providence, because any legislator or just person could put the language of the Ten Commandments together, and probably even do it better. But if the Ten Commandments were written in such a way that you could just kind of see them glistening and see the incredible beauty coming from them, that would be, I think, in harmony with deist principles. Where the deists really believe that you can sense the divine, you can sense God from God's works. Um, Looking through the telescope and looking at the stars and the beauty and precision involved in the stars, looking through the microscope and seeing, the um, incredible intricacy of the um, atoms and molecules and cells. So, um, so I would dispute that aspect of what he's talking about. Anyway, tomorrow we will get into chapter 3. Most of these chapters are pretty short, but he starts to get into particulars of the New and Old Testament, and I think this is a instructive review that we will have for our Bible decodes. I think that Thomas Paine presents a few ciphers that we can use to help us decode the Bible when we get around to that. So we're just trying to build up our arsenal of different perspectives and different ways of looking at the New Testament, so that when we finally do open up the book of Luke, we've got a loaded quiver. Okay, thanks for tuning in today. Like, share, subscribe, and come back tomorrow to get to probably chapters 3 and 4 of Thomas Paine's Age of Reason.